Good morning again. I am Gina Parsons-Diamond, the ACRL staff member liaison for Project Outcome for academic libraries. Before we hear from the Clemson librarians about using the instruction survey at their institution, I'm just going to do a quick overview of the toolkit, which you can find at acrl.projectoutcome.org. If you haven't signed up yet, now is your chance. The toolkit is totally free. And if you experience any problems with the registration process, please don't hesitate to email me at acrl@projectoutcome.org. So I'm just wondering how many people have heard of Project Outcome before attending this webinar. So if you could just go ahead and raise your hand if you have heard of the toolkit or have signed up for it. Oh, very nice. More than half of our attendees are already using Project Outcome. If you're not familiar with the toolkit, that's totally fine. I wanted to emphasize that it is a free toolkit for academic and research librarians and LIS students, and it's designed to help academic libraries understand and share the impact of essential library services and programs, and it provides simple, standardized surveys in an easy-to-use process for measuring and analyzing outcomes. Project Outcome also provides libraries with resources and training support needed to apply their results and confidently advocate for the library's future. And I just want to take a moment to emphasize that this toolkit is for everyone, not just for people with assessment in their job titles or descriptions. It was explicitly designed to relate to the widest possible range of library services and roles. ACRL's Project Outcome is based on a model developed and tested by the Public Library Association, which has been in the field since 2015. During the creation process of the toolkit, the ACRL task force identified 7 key areas that cover a broad range of programs and services that academic libraries provide. Outcome measurement surveys were developed for each of these 7 areas. And you can find the previews of those standardized Project Outcome surveys in the Resources tab. And today we'll be focusing on the instruction survey and how it was used at Clemson. So each of our surveys is designed to capture 4 key outcomes: knowledge, confidence, application or behavior change, and awareness. They also contain 2 open-ended questions that help you get the most out of your patron feedback. What did they like most about the program, and what can the library do to improve? Based on PLA's experience and early evidence from the academic library side, these open-ended questions have been invaluable to libraries. This is where you can gain the most insight into how to help patrons and gather qualitative evidence to demonstrate value in the community. So we know that administering surveys and entering data can be kind of a pain, but what makes it worth it is what you can do with the results. In Project Outcome, your results are available in a variety of formats, making it easy to review, interpret, analyze, and share your results. One format is the data dashboards, which show graphic visualizations of your aggregate survey data. All these dashboard images can be saved as screenshots or printed as a PDF and inserted into your reports. So while the dashboards are helpful for exploring and analyzing results, if you want to share them with other library staff, management, or stakeholders, you probably want a report. Project Outcome has 2 types of reports: summary and custom. The PDF summary reports give you the results of one survey and are designed for quick and easy sharing with staff, managers, boards, or other stakeholders. If you wish to build your own report and customize it by applying filters, focusing on multiple surveys, or adding a custom mission statement from your library, you can definitely do that in the custom report builder. I know this was a kind of fast overview, So if you have any questions, feel free to email me at acrl@projectoutcome.org. Otherwise, there is a peer discussion board in the toolkit where you can feel free to post ideas and questions to hear from other people in the project outcome community about how they're using the toolkit. Thanks so much for sticking with me for this quick overview. And I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to our presenters, Megan Palmer and Anne Grant.
Good morning. Thank you all for joining us. Today we're going to be talking about the project outcome implementation at Clemson University libraries. So today we're going to talk about why we chose to do project outcome at our library. And then we're going to talk about how we implemented it and how we're using the data. And lastly, we're going to talk about future directions.
I'm Anne Grant. I'm the instruction coordinator at Clemson, and I've been with libraries about 20 years.
My name is Megan Palmer, and I'm the assessment librarian. I have been at Clemson for about 2 years, but I have been an assessment librarian for about 7 years now.
So we're going to start off by talking about why we chose project outcome for our libraries. So before we were using project outcome, we were doing some pretty typical stuff, but in order to understand why we chose it, I think it's important to revisit where we were. So maybe it'll be relatable for those of you who aren't using project outcome yet, and to see whether or not it might be something you're interested in. So before using project outcome, we were relying pretty heavily for our assessment on individual session evaluations. So we would give the regular, how was your experience in the class? Megan, if you want to go to the next slide. So any sessions that we did, sometimes our librarians would choose to do assessments of those sessions. Sometimes when we had organized programming, like for English 1030, we would do evaluations across the board for those sessions. But we really didn't have a programmatic, like everybody was doing the same kind of evaluation so that we could tell a cohesive story. We were entering our statistics into LibInsight, and we made those statistics a little more robust so that we could determine more than just how many people attended and how many sessions we offered. We started to put categories for, what learning outcomes did you use? What audience did you teach to? What location were you when you were teaching? So we tried to gather a little more data that way. And we also sometimes would request input from teaching faculty or collaborators. So if we offered a workshop for the Writing Center, or if we offered a workshop for a particular course, we would have one-on-one meetings with those instructors afterwards to make sure that we were meeting their needs. But a lot of that was informal and not documented anywhere that we could really articulate out. So we'd like to know a little bit about what you guys are doing. So I saw about half of you guys are using Project Outcome or are aware of it. So this is a Google Jamboard. If you guys would go to, Megan, could I take over the share for just a second? Would that be possible? Nothing like a little last minute. Oh, that's my something else I'm working on. Hold please. Okay. So this is a Google Jamboard. If you guys can get to it, the sticky note feature is over here on the side. So if you'll click on a sticky note and just put, how have you tried to get instruction feedback in the classroom? So we got some pre and post session student evaluations. And this is anything, no judgment. I mean, you can see I can't use technology. So, I mean, this is nothing to be nervous about. 1 minute paper reflections, that's great. Post assignment surveys, nice. Faculty surveys. Oh, okay. LibWizard, okay. Post-session assessment, 3-minute assessment. Survey Monkey, okay. Faculty who've had a session. Research blogs. Individual surveys. Ooh, I like that. Cognito forms. That sounds interesting. LibWizard pre and post. Ooh, I like the Google form sent to all faculty who requested a one-shot. I have so many questions about these. Tracking stats on number of courses taught, some post-assessment. This is really interesting. LibWizard is pretty heavily used. 3-2-1 surveys. I'm gonna have to look some of these up. I'll save this Google, what is this called? Jamboard, and we'll send this out to you guys so you can have ideas, because I'm already seeing ideas I'm going to steal for this. Quick Qualtrics survey as an exit ticket. Nice. Ooh, institutional effectiveness. LibWizard surveys. Nice. Okay, so beautiful array. And this is kind of what we were doing. A lot of like sort of hit and miss. I would imagine maybe you're doing this institution wide or, you know, across your libraries. But for us, it was a lot of, well, Megan knows how to use LibWizard, so she's going to make the survey, but Anne doesn't know how to use it, so she's not going to use it. So we really didn't have that sort of overarching feel. So Megan, I'm going to stop sharing, if I can figure out how to do that, and I'll give it back to you. Thank you. So we also wanted to know if you guys have used Project Outcome for something, well, let's just ask this. I'm going to take off for something besides instruction, because I'm really curious about anybody who's used it in their instruction. So if you could just put yes in the chat if you have used Project Outcome for instruction. Nice. Okay. Okay. I'll give folks just a second. Okay, somebody's got some no's trickling in. Okay, for those yeses, for those of you who have used Project Outcome for instruction, have you used it for any of the other categories? Put yes if you have. And if you haven't, just put yes if you've used it for something besides instruction. Oh, okay, Erin, space, technology, teaching support, okay. Your institution has, okay, once or twice for research consultations. Oh, that reminds me, Katie, I need to talk about that. Okay. Awesome. Space survey, study room usage, nice. We're planning to. Awesome. Okay, well, that gives us a good feel for what we're looking at, and it gives me some reminders of stuff that I want to talk about. So excellent. We appreciate y'all sharing with us your experiences. So the reason that we chose Project Outcome was that we wanted to bring our story together, because in order to talk to our community, who often, quite frankly, don't understand what librarians do or what the library is there for, we needed to be able to articulate our impact in some way. And we all know that it's really difficult to articulate the impact of library instruction in a really strongly worded way. So that this gave us a really interesting opportunity to relate to our audience. So I'm going to turn it over to Megan, who's going to talk a little bit about how we implemented and how we're currently using Project Outcome.
Sure. So I started at Clemson Libraries in the fall of 2019. So I've been at Clemson for a little less than 2 years at this point. And when I first started, Anne was really excited about Project Outcome. She really wanted to implement it here at Clemson Libraries. I did not have any experience with it at my previous institution. We did have a fairly robust instruction assessment program there. And so at the time we didn't take on Project Outcome because we felt what we were using worked well for us. So when Ann and I first started talking about project outcome, she was already piloting it with 2 different instruction librarians. And so to prepare to roll it out, we attended a lot of trainings and watched a lot of webinars about it. So for example, there was a 1-hour training at the South Carolina Library Association conference. And I also attended a 3-hour training at the Southeastern Library Assessment Conference. And I shared earlier, but there is a YouTube page for ACRL specifically about project outcome webinars. And we watched a lot of trainings about it. And this was great because we adapted what we learned and we presented it to interested colleagues. And with the 2 librarians that were already piloting project outcomes, they were able to provide feedback during the training and how they've implemented using it, specifically with the instruction immediate use survey. And, you know, this training isn't something that we do training and it's done. Ann and I have planned ongoing training for assessing the use and the implementation of project outcome. So for example, we have a couple of different workshops that we're planning for the summer that we're going to talk about later. But it's definitely, you know, we started with the instruction survey and we've kind of started moving using other different types of topic surveys. And we're also going to be talking about some of those briefly later as well. So, I'm just curious, for those of you that have implemented project outcome, what types of training have you provided or have you attended that kind of informed you of how to use project outcome? And go ahead and just respond in the chat. Okay, so there's a project outcome roadshow participant. Okay, another attendee learned about it at LOEX. A couple of webinars, the Slack workshop, participated in the pilot. That's awesome. And another attendee just looked at the project outcome website. Yes, they have done a fantastic job with the website. Any sort of question that you want to know, you will probably find it on the website. I know when we first started implementing it, there were some things that I wasn't sure about, and I was able to find a lot of the information on the website. That's a good point there. So these are just a sample of some of the survey reports that we have implemented. So for the spring, just looking at our instruction immediate survey results. So from January 2021 to current, we had 187 survey responses. And this was some of the feedback that we got from students. Over 90% said that they learned something new to help them succeed in classes. They felt more confident about completing assignments. They intended to apply what they learned, and they were more aware of resources and services provided by the library. We have a Dean's Research Club speaker series at our university, and basically what this is different faculty members across the university are asked to come and talk about their research areas, and this is kind of a way to foster collaboration across units and to gain interest in that faculty member's research. And so we used the event survey for this, and we had 32 survey responses. And so this was some of the feedback that we received on that series. And then there's also a way that you can do an individual research librarian report. And so this is another sample. And this is something that you can put right into an annual review or into a tenure file. And we're going to talk about that a little bit in a little bit. So in the chat, please tell us how your project outcome surveys what they have shown you or what they could show you. Okay, so one attendee shared that the confidence outcome is lower than other outcomes, so that's something that they're working on in their sessions. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, that was my individual report. I just noticed, I was like, oh, my confidence is only at 90%. I got to figure out how to get that up.
And you guys can continue sharing in the chat, but I'm going to go ahead and allow Anne to start talking about some testimony about using project outcome.
So I asked my friend Meredith, or my colleague, she's also my friend, if she would mind if I shared some of her experiences with project outcome. Now, Meredith is a very traditional library instructor. I admire her greatly for her work. And she is also one of my instructional pioneers. I told her I need to get her a bonnet and an apron, because she's like on the forefront of like finding out how to do instruction better. So she was teaching some sessions at one of our off-campus locations in Greenville about accounting and business. So she had to go into some really detailed use of database, how to use databases for particular assignments. It was very targeted instruction. And so she got a lot of feedback from the students, which, by the way, she distributed this survey in paper. She distributed it in paper and then gave me the results, and then I entered those results into project outcome for her, because it gave me an experience to find out how difficult or easy it would be to enter paper surveys into project outcome, and it's not bad. And also it gave me some insight into the kind of feedback that Meredith was getting. And she got a few requests from students in that qualitative area to create tutorials, especially since she was going kind of step by step through the databases. So when COVID hit, this professor that offered this face-to-face class had to transition online. So Meredith and I worked together, already knowing from the project outcome results that they wanted these tutorials anyway. We worked together to create a LibGuide that contained a bunch of short videos that complemented both the things that the students had requested and the needs that the professor had. So that worked really, really well. But I also noticed Meredith's value, not that I didn't before, but Meredith's value in her traditional approach to library instruction, that kind of sage on the stage, walking people through things. There was a lot of appreciation from the students for that approach in this particular class and for this particular assignment. So through Meredith's story, it's been really interesting to watch how you can take that feedback and then use it constructively to build into your future instruction. So my second testimonial is me. And I use project outcome in a couple of different ways. One, so if I go to teach a session for, like, I'm the history and geography librarian. So I go and teach a session for somebody and I use project outcome, the immediate instruction survey. Well, as soon as the session is over and I have the results back from the students, I can create a report in like 2.5 seconds, the one that you just saw Megan produce, along with any kind of qualitative data that's anonymized, and send it to the instructor to say, hey, this is what happened in the session just now. The students learned something that they're going to use in the class. They hopefully gained confidence. Katie, I'm going to work on that. They So all the ways that you can see that it enhanced their experience in the class, as well as getting some particular feedback about what they found helpful. So I think that they find that helpful. You know, most of the time I just get back a thanks, but I think it continues that conversation and helps people see the value of instruction in real terms, you know, from their students. I also have been trying to talk to faculty and trying myself to use project outcome to accentuate my annual evaluation data. So when I talk about my instruction, it is more than just, well, I taught 45 students in 15 sessions. It's showing more about the quality that the students perceived. So it's sort of a different, deeper understanding of what you're doing. I've also used the project outcome survey for teaching support for internal use. Because I'm the instruction coordinator, I provide sessions for my teaching library folks about, you know, improving their teaching. So I've used that survey for some of my internal instruction. And also Katie reminded me, and she might be using this for her email signature, but I created a research help, like general survey, and I linked to that in my email signature. So I say, did I help you today? You know, fill out this quick survey and I can give you feedback. To date, I don't have any results. So I don't know if people don't feel comfortable doing that or don't really understand it. Maybe I need to explain it better. If anybody has tips, I'd love to hear them. So those are a couple of the testimonials that we have from people that are using it.
And we had a great question in the chat, and they put that they were wondering whether anyone noticed an increase or about the same student response rate between online versus online surveys during remote learning. Now, I'm not really in the classroom. Anne, have you noticed a difference? Or I'm sorry, between in-person versus online? Have you noticed a difference, Anne?
You know, I find now I'm not going to be scientific about this, Eileen. Anecdotally, I think the response is better, tends to be better in paper, just because, you know, like the students can't leave the classroom until they fill out that slip of paper. However, it could also be, I don't know, that'd be an interesting research study. We should collaborate on that. Because I don't know the answer to that. I just babbled.
No, I think that's a great point. That's something that at my previous institution, we went back and forth about having an online form versus having a paper form, because at least if it's paper, then, you know, the students generally will feel more obligated to fill out the paper form. But if you have them fill it out in the computer, well, you know, they might just not even pull it up. But honestly, I think that, you know, if a student was confused about something, they generally do want to let you know, or if they think that you did do a good job, they generally do want to let you know. And yes, and I think that's a good point too, that maybe it's a generational thing, that maybe younger students find online surveys easier. But I do agree that that probably would be a really interesting research project. And then somebody added that they have seen a significant drop in responses from our paper forms in comparison to online forms. Yes, that's, and another thing too, like, you know, having gone through the pandemic, we're going to be talking about it in a little bit, but we surveyed our instruction librarians, and one of the responses was that they stopped doing assessments during the pandemic just because they didn't want to overwhelm students that are already in an online environment, but they plan to pick up doing the assessment once we're out of the pandemic. So I thought that was really interesting. But we're going to talk about that a little bit more in just a few minutes. So the use of the data. So how can you use some of this data? So this is a great way to communicate with your faculty to let them know what students are getting out of the sessions. I think this is also a great way to reach out to new faculty to advertise your instruction session. So if you have a new faculty member that maybe do not have a lot of experience with having a librarian come in and do an instruction session, or perhaps you have a new faculty member that's just newer to the university but is a seasoned faculty member, you can share your results of the instruction sessions that you've done and kind of use it as a way to get in the door to go and do instruction sessions for them. Another use of the data is just honing your instruction skills. So you can make immediate changes based on the feedback and suggestions that you get from the students. So perhaps you're teaching a series of English 101 instruction sessions, and maybe one of your feedback was that you went a little bit too fast covering a database, or a student was just slightly confused. So in a later session, you can make a change based on the feedback you get from students. Another way to use this data is using it for annual reviews, and it's a way to discuss instructional impact and improvement. So a lot of times with institutions, they're very focused on student learning and student success. So you can use this data to show the impact that you've had on instruction. So it's a great way to use it to show how you have had an impact on student learning. We can also use this data for reporting for accreditation boards and also for your board of trustees. So it's really a way to close that assessment loop. So you're doing the instruction session, you assess the instruction, and then you make improvements based off of the reporting that you get, but then you can show the accreditation board or the board of trustees how you made that improvement. So how are we using Project Outcome? Ann and I sent out a survey to our instruction librarians, and we just wanted to know if they've implemented Project Outcome for their instruction sessions assessments. And what we found was that most of our librarians have in fact implemented Project Outcome. Some of the things that they liked about it was the ease of use, that it was standardized, and that they can make comparisons across institutions. Another question that we had was whether they were doing a sample of their instruction sessions or if they assessed after each class. And I was pleasantly surprised to find that most of our librarians stated that they assess each class. One responded that they chose not to do an assessment during the pandemic, and another instructor stated that they only assess graduate classes. So I thought that was really interesting. And some of this feedback, we're going to be planning a series of workshops over the summer. And I think that the feedback we got from the survey is going to have a really interesting discussion that we have with our instruction librarians. Another thing that we asked them about was whether they have implemented feedback into their annual review or their tenure reporting. So here at Clemson, we have both an annual review, but then we also have a tenure review that we have to do each year. And what we found was that most have not implemented the feedback. So out of all of our respondents, only 2 have said that they've actually used it in their annual reviews or their tenure reporting. So what this tells us, and this was already a discussion that Ann and I have been having for several months now, but having a session on how they can use the data that they get from Project Outcomes and how they can put it into their annual review packet and how they can put it into their tenure packet, just to show the impact that they've had on student learning and student success. So how have you used Project Outcome data? Please put it in the chat so we can share with everyone. Which an attendee had put earlier, that I wanted to make sure that I get in the recording, but that you can use LibWizard and export the results and upload into Project Outcome. So that is great. Okay, so one attendee said that they used it to help plan instruction classroom spaces while planning for their new library building. Another attendee said that they use it for annual reporting. Well, and the last part of our session is we're going to talk about some future directions. So where do we go next? One thing that we are going to do is continue to expand the usage. And Anna and I are already planning a series of workshops this summer. But a lot of our instruction librarians have implemented the instruction immediate survey. And one thing that I really want to encourage and find and look at the data from it is using the instruction follow-up survey. So the follow-up survey is sent, ACRL recommends 4 to 8 weeks after the survey, but it's sent out several weeks after the instruction session. And it tells you if the student felt that they used what they learned to complete their assignment, if they felt that they did better in their class, if they used other library resources or services. And I think that this is really going to be a great way to get at that student learning outcome and how that library instruction impacted student success. So do they feel like they got a successful grade in their class because of that instruction session? And of course, this wouldn't be something, because it can take a lot of work, either relying on the faculty member to send it out to their students or getting the student email addresses to then email out the student. But since a lot of our instruction librarians have already implemented using the immediate survey after most of their instruction sessions, I think that we could really advocate to do a sample for the follow-up and just get a much smaller sample size, but get some of that more follow-up data. And I think that would be a really great way to complement the amazing work and show the amazing work that our instruction librarians are doing. We would also like to expand usage in some of the other topic surveys. So definitely encouraging more of the events and programs survey. Another survey that I'm really interested in implementing is the library technology survey. So we have a very robust library technology lending program. And I think that that would help to justify if we need to get more funding to buy more equipment. I think having that data will help with our dean going to the provost to ask for more funding.
We'd also like to develop some maybe annual questions, maybe semi-annual, maybe semesterly, to determine special directions or initiatives. So if we were wanting to pursue more drop-in workshops, maybe we would include a question on the surveys that go across the board. What kind of topics would you like to see, or using that medium to sort of collect user feedback. But I think, again, that would really need to be coordinated and an effort that is centrally administered so that we can get good data and we're not getting kind of piecemeal data and going back to where we were at the beginning. And so Megan's going to talk a little bit more about the onboarding.
So I'm sure for many of you, this pandemic was kind of rough on us. We had one new faculty member that was still living in another state because his state was on orders where they weren't allowed, they were on stay-at-home orders, they weren't allowed to move. And then we had a part-time lecturer also start during the pandemic. And one thing that I realized talking more about them was I really didn't do a good job with training them on using project outcomes. So based on the feedback that I got from them and talking a little bit more in depth, we are pretty fortunate at Clemson that we have several new faculty librarian positions that we are hiring for right now. So we're anticipating that we're going to have several new faculty librarians this summer. So Anne and I have already talked about, I mentioned earlier that we have a series of workshops planned. So one of our workshops is going to be an onboarding for project outcomes for some of our new instruction librarians that are going to be starting this summer, just so that I can be a little bit more proactive of teaching them what is project outcomes, how to implement it, and also kind of get them up to speed with some of the ways that we've taught the other librarians the benefits of using project outcome. Do you have anything else to add for that, Anne?
No, I think it's really crucial though to get people as they get there so that you're making it part of their practice instead of something that you tack on later. So one of the ideas I'd like to explore further is to use our project outcome data to create promotional materials, to have some kind of data that we can use to articulate our value in fun, punchy, like these surveys create really good one-liners. 98% of students who attended our workshops gained confidence in learning or learned one new thing. Like those are really good one-liners that you could make into, t-shirts or fun videos or, just something that grabs people's attention. So exploring more on how to make those statements through promotional means, I think could be really interesting. For example, here's this great quote from a student from some of the qualitative pieces that, right from the horse's mouth about what kind of value they see in a workshop. And this is just one of many that you get back from these students. And when you have things like this, that you could get other students to see how their peers are using the library, it could encourage more of them to reach out, just depending on where we place the promotional material and how it's delivered, et cetera. So I just think it's an opportunity.
And one thing that I wanted to point out that just kind of popped in my head, but Anne was really great with investigating this when we were first starting doing the training for project outcome. But since it's standardized, we were able to get a blanket IRB approval for all of the instruction surveys, so that our instruction librarians are able to use the data that they're pulling to do for presentations. So that's another benefit to using project outcome, is that it's the same survey being used across the library. So you can work with your local IRB and get a blanket approval to be so that your instruction, that's another way for a buy-in. So your instruction librarians can then use that data to do presentations.
So we're just curious, have any of you guys used project outcome results to create promo materials for your libraries? Have you created t-shirts, buttons, posters?
Well, and with our awesome makerspace, maybe we'll make a project outcome comment t-shirt and do a drawing for somebody that comes to one of our workshops.
I think that'd be an excellent idea. Some crowdsourced promo materials. Yeah, for sure. The infographics with QR codes. Okay, that's cool. Well, just one of the many points to ponder. We're so grateful that you guys are so open to sharing, because that's what builds our community. Like, in our next slide, it's all about sharing because in order to move forward, we really have to work together, because I know all of us are overwhelmed, or at least I'm overwhelmed. So just hearing some of these ideas and hearing what other people are doing can give you the confidence that apparently I'm not giving all of my students, to try new things and maybe find new collaborators. We got a research project going already in this session. So, there's always possibilities when we work together. So thank you for being open and honest, and hopefully we'll be able to save the chat and all these great ideas and share the Jamboard. You'll have a link to it. Megan sent you the slides so that you can get back to that Jamboard and see the ideas. I'm gonna have to do some research on some of those. I've never heard of them. So we really appreciate y'all's time today.
And I do want to reemphasize the sense of community with Project Outcome. I mean, you get to see who all is using it across the US. So we were able to see who in our state is currently using it, who nearby is currently using it. So it's really a great way that if you're interested in implementing it, you can go ahead and create a free account and just reach out to some of the libraries that are within your network. So either within your state, or maybe you know somebody at a different library that is currently using it, and just put you in contact with somebody on implementing it in your library. And Linda has a question in the chat, and this might be a better, Gina might be able to give you a better response. But Gina, she asked how she can get more practical training in order to implement.
Sure, that's a great question. So I would really recommend checking out the resources tab, and we have a whole section for tutorials, which will take you through step-by-step all of the basic project outcome processes, from creating your account to creating your survey to running a report and analyzing your results. And they're chock full of screenshots and practical step-by-step tips.
And whoever was talking about just getting in there and trying it and playing around with it, that's what I did. A lot of it is just messing with it. And if you have questions, here are our emails. You can reach out to us. I would do a Zoom session and show you what I know, which, is about that much, but I'm happy to explore together. Sometimes you just need somebody to walk through it with you.
Yeah, and this is Gina again. We really recommend an iterative process with Project Outcome. So find one class or one small program that you want to get started with, and just do one survey for that one session or topic. And that'll really let you get into the toolkit and see how it works without overwhelming you by saying, oh, you have to start with every instruction session you've run a whole semester.
Yeah, and that was definitely one thing I think that we emphasized through our presentation. Is we started with a pilot. So there was just 2 librarians that just started doing the immediate instruction survey just to see how it went. And then we kind of rolled it out to the rest of our instruction librarians and anyone else that was interested in doing some sort of assessment, because there are different surveys, but we really focused on the the immediate instruction surveys. And now we're getting ready to roll out using some of the other topics, and also looking at some of the follow-up surveys.
Megan and Anna, have a quick, just wanted to follow up on one thing that was in the chat. The project outcome surveys have a standard set of questions in them so that, we're all asking the same questions and you get that benchmarking data, but you do have the ability to add a couple of your own individual questions. And there was a question about a test bank, and there is in the resource section of the toolkit, I believe, a bank of questions where people have added those, 3 optional questions so that you don't have to reinvent the wheel. There is kind of a bank there of how other people have asked the questions that they've added themselves to the set of standard questions. And just on behalf of the Project Outcome Editorial Board, thank you both for doing this presentation today. It was really great.
Thanks for the opportunity, and thanks for sharing all y'all's ideas.
And Aaron asked, how do you set up your surveys? Does each librarian have a separate survey link or by course? So each instruction librarian has their own account within Project Outcomes. And so they're able to go in there and set up their own surveys and kind of manage sending the survey out themselves. But of course, Anne and I think Anne may have done a little bit more with helping people with getting set up. I know she was having some librarians were still using paper surveys. So she and a couple of student workers were helping with setting up some of those surveys and also with putting in the survey data from the paper surveys. Do you have anything else to add to that, Anne?
This is Gina. I will say in each survey, there's a link that you can send out to student workers or volunteers so they can enter paper survey responses without having a project outcome account. If you're worried about librarian time entering surveys.
Yes, and Jennifer brought up the naming convention for your surveys. That's really important. Especially when you start to, your survey bank starts to grow, being able to have your, naming convention there, like grant dash history 274. Well, thank you guys so much. This was fun.
Yes, thank you.